As of this year, 7 states now have black men and women as their top law enforcement officers, state attorneys general. It is a record, and that progress deserves to be celebrated. And yet, it comes at a time when broader racial progress still seems uneven at best, because it is a time when other black men and women are dying unnecessarily at the hands of police officers. This week, Tyre Nichols, the 29-year-old black man who was brutally beaten by Memphis police officers, was laid to rest. Vice President Kamala Harris spoke at Tyre Nichols' funeral.
As Vice President of the United States, we demand that Congress pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Joe Biden will sign it. And we should not delay, and we will not be denied. It is non-negotiable.
Now, there is a clear contrast between the initial police report on Tyre Nichols and what we saw on police body camera footage. 4 of the 5 officers charged in the death of Tyre Nichols had prior work violations. His killing was unnecessary, it was unjust, and it is a reminder of the ongoing systemic issues with policing that remain in our country. Tonight, I'm honored to be joined by 3 state attorneys general from around the United States to discuss this issue and much more. Andrea Campbell of Massachusetts, Aaron Ford, of Nevada, and Kwame Raoul of Illinois. Attorneys General, it's great to have all 3 of you with us. Thank you so much for making time. Andrea, I'd like to start with you if I can. In your statement about Tyre Nichols' death, you wrote about the tremendous work needed to address corruption, police brutality, and racial injustice. Talk to us about how you and your community members are doing on that front, and what work would you like to see done to address police violence?
First of all, thank you for having me, and it's great to be on with my colleagues who, of course, have been doing the work for a long time. We all didn't need to see another video to know that we still need transparency and accountability in our policing systems and our criminal legal systems. In my past work as a local counselor in the city of Boston, worked on making sure our officers were equipped with body cameras. We now have a civilian review board in the city of Boston to review incidents of misconduct. At the state level, we have a post system where an officer can be decertified based on certain behavior. But as Attorney General, I have pledged to create a police accountability unit within the office. And that is critically important because even though in Massachusetts we have not seen an incident quite at the scale and magnitude related to Tyre Nichols, there is still tremendous work to do. There are still folks who are being racially profiled. There are folks, of course, who have had unfortunate incidents with police officers, and there's still a lot more work to do to ensure our systems have processes within them to hold officers accountable when something goes terribly wrong, while doing the work of diversifying our state agencies and making sure they're transparent and accountable to the people they serve.
Aaron, you've said that law enforcement must listen to the pain of the community. Why do you think they are not listening? I mean, with everything that we have seen with police violence, it seems there are still police departments that are not listening to these communities and their pain. What is your understanding of why that is not happening?
Well, listen, I think that the lines of communication certainly have to open up, remain open in certain instances. Here in Nevada, similar to what has happened in Massachusetts, we've made great strides in trying to improve relationships between law enforcement and the communities that we serve. I say we because I'm a part of law enforcement. And so what we've done is pass, for example, bills that have a duty to intervene, and that when an officer sees bad things happening to one of our residents or one of our citizenry, then they're supposed to intervene, and there are repercussions because of that. We are waiting for the federal government to pass the Justice and Policing Act, the George Floyd Act, but we have also in our own state passed pattern and practice investigation authority for my office to allow me to investigate police departments, to improve, again, the relationship between law enforcement and the community that we serve. But there are certain communities that have no trust at all in law enforcement, and frankly, I came from a community like that. And so what I endeavor to do is to create that trust where it's never existed. And it begins with listening to the outcry. Now, I will say this before I give you the mic back. We don't have to go to Minneapolis or to Memphis or elsewhere to understand the turmoil that is wrought between law enforcement and our communities. We, in our own state, have had instances like Byron Williams. We've had instances like Jorge Gomez that have undercut the trust in the community between law enforcement and the community, and we have to continue to work toward rectifying those issues.
Kwame, can you talk to us about how your office works with police officers and precincts in your state? What steps would you like to see taken towards accountability?
Sure. So one of the things Andrea mentioned, having a decertification statute. I work with police chiefs and sheriffs and state's attorneys to make sure that the decertification statute that we had in our state was enhanced such that we can have an accountability that touches things beyond conviction for a felony. We know that it's very difficult. It's rare that a police officer gets convicted for a felony, even if he or she commits one. And so we wanted to make sure that there was accountability in those cases. We also added the patterns and practice investigation authority for our office that AG Ford mentioned, and we advocated for the inclusion of that in the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, that state AGs would have the authority to conduct patterns and practice investigations, because the Department of Justice on their own cannot handle it throughout the state. We have to work collaboratively with DOJ in order to make sure that we work towards constitutional policing.
Let me change pace for a moment. Attorney General Campbell, you are the first black woman to be elected Attorney General in Massachusetts and the first black woman to any statewide office in your state. Talk to me about what it means to you to take on this role at this time and be breaking these barriers.
I see it as an incredible opportunity. I spent my day today actually behind the wall visiting men at a prison here in Massachusetts, really speaking to them while I recognize the historic nature of my victory, what it means to them and so many folks across the Commonwealth. We still have work to do. I'm very faith-driven. I don't feel as though me being in this role is by accident in this moment in time. I was, of course, emotionally overwhelmed by the video of Tyre Nichols. But at the same time, it's an opportunity to really address systemic racism that still exists in this country and all of the injustices that we see. Most of my life has been connected to, a loss in my life has been connected to the prison system. All of my biological parents are deceased. My twin brother, the same, cycling in and out of the prison system. And as a result of being in that system, losing their lives in many ways. So this is an opportunity to really deliver for constituents all across Massachusetts, but to do it in partnership with folks across the country to address systemic racism and racial injustice.
Attorney General Raul, you've talked about the significance of your position as a black attorney general and having a presence in this space. Can you talk to us about how diversity in these leadership roles makes or doesn't make a difference? We saw black police officers beating a black man in Memphis, Tennessee. The diversity in of itself may not be enough to bring about the reform this country needs.
Yeah, listen, after the murder of George Floyd, I wrote a letter to my staff, and I reflected in that letter my own personal experiences as a black man who was raised on the south side of Chicago, who had my own experiences, unfortunately, with unconstitutional policing. Being the father of a young black man and a young black female who have had their own encounters. And so those lived experiences brought to be through the office of Chief Legal Officer of the state brings about a perspective that is not had in many other states. And that perspective, even within my office and freeing up others in my office to bring their perspectives from their diverse backgrounds, it is a healthy thing towards working towards good policy and good enforcement of good policy.
Mr. Ford, you were the first black attorney general in Nevada. Talk about the challenges and the highlights of this office for you as a first as well, and what it symbolizes for your state.
Well, as we say in my church, I'm blessed and highly favored to be in this position. I view it as an honor. I view it as an opportunity, and I view it as a responsibility to speak truth to power from my position of power. Utilizing a voice that has heretofore been unrepresented in this particular office. I know we're talking about more than just policing particularly, but in the aftermath of George Floyd as well, I spoke to the issue from a very personal perspective. I'm a black man married to a black woman, raising 3 black sons and a black nephew. George Floyd wasn't the first time we had to engage in encountering conversation around the death of a black man at the hands of police. It wasn't the last, clearly. And so what we look to do in this position is to utilize our position in order to enhance, again, communication between law enforcement and the communities that we serve, and beyond enhancing communication, enhancing trust. And I think that I view this as an opportunity to do exactly that through this position, and I'm, again, blessed and highly favored to be here.
Aaron, Andrea, Kwame, please stick around. We're going to continue this conversation with State Attorneys General right after a quick break. Don't go anywhere.